heard on the news last week that there is more oil being stored in the world than it ever has before. So what's up with those gas prices? It makes me so mad. Oh, our message today. Love isn't easily angered. And our key text is 1 Corinthians 13:5, which says love is not easily angered. So we're in a political season where we have people running for president. I just heard it last night on the news. They said that, well, on both sides, Republican and Democrat, that certain candidates have tapped in to the anger of the people. And so I thought, well, our country is angry. It's angry at its leadership. And we have angry people running for office. And we have angry voters that are going to elect these angry people so that they can carry out their angry duty. Is this healthy? Is this the future of our country? Is there a happy ending to this? Well, of all the topics in this series, I've been sort of looking forward to this one because I've noticed sort of a character flaw in modern-day Christians. And, you know, they kept talking about all these evangelicals in South Carolina and how angry they were. So, you know, I think that we need to correct this character flaw, and that flaw is this. We seem to feel that we have the right to be provoked to anger when we perceive somehow that we've been wronged. And in fact, many Christians, I know none here, but I know you all probably know Christians, that walk around with sort of a chip on their shoulder, just waiting and hoping for someone to knock it off so they can retaliate in righteous indignation. Why we feel that we have that right, I don't know, because I don't find that anywhere in Scripture. I once read this in David Wilkerson's newsletter. Some of the most quarrelsome, argumentative, caustic, mean-spirited people are those who claim to be Spirit-filled believers. Now let me give you a disclaimer here. Those of you that know me know that I am a rather stoic, non-emotional guy. It I believe probably comes from my Norwegian roots. I determined that I'm really not very Norwegian at all, but my heritage is Norwegian. I grew up in western Wisconsin. The phone books there are almost entirely Olsen, or Johnson, or Hansen, or something son, Anderson. Rich, didn't want to leave you out there. So anyway, they're all Norwegian, and that's just the way that we are. You might think it's not fair for me to preach on this subject about being angry when I never get angry. Well, here's the thing. My mother's side is Irish, okay? And here's how my psyche works. I have this very, very long Norwegian fuse. But you don't want to know what's at the end of that fuse. It's my mother's Irish temper. So even though you may not have ever seen it, my wife has seen it more times than I care to admit, and it's not pretty. I am capable of losing my temper. I really am. It's true. And I'm not proud of that, but I just wanted to give you my qualifications before we go any further in this message. But what does it mean to be easily angered? I don't think anyone has to use a lot of imagination to understand what this means. We've all become angry, and we've all certainly seen others angry. The King James says in this verse, it says that love is not easily provoked. This gives us a bit more insight. It points to the root of the angry. You're angry because you've been provoked to anger. In other words, it gets back to what I said in the intro, that a lot of Christians walk around with this chip on their shoulder, daring others to knock it off. And if we drilled down a bit more, we could say that love is not easily offended. Love is not easily offended. I've dealt with people all my life, both in and out of the ministry, that I would categorize as easily offended. And that makes me so mad. No. It's been my experience in the church that easily offended people are usually legalistic people. They have a list of do's and don'ts, and if you either violate that list or disagree with them about their list, they become offended. In fact, this very letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthian church, it was written in part because of the divisions and the quarrels within the Corinthian church. And Paul writes in the very first chapter, he writes in 1 Corinthians 1:10, he says, I appeal to you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another, so that there may be no divisions among you, and that you may be perfectly united in mind and thought. He then goes on throughout this letter to sort of break down some of the reasons for those divisions and quarrels, to give them some direction. And one of the issues that they dealt with then was that in those days, if you bought meat, it was often meat that had been sacrificed to an idol. I don't know how you can, if it's been sacrificed, I don't know how you can then sell it. I mean, once you sacrifice it, isn't it then given? But anyway, that's the way it was. Often you go in the marketplace and buy meat, you didn't know where that meat came from. You didn't know if it had been sacrificed or given, or that the animal had somehow been killed in a temple, idol-worshipping temple or not. You just didn't know. And the thing was, Paul didn't really have a problem with this meat. He didn't. I once worked in a slaughterhouse. It was a kosher slaughterhouse. And part of my job was, I don't want to get into too much detail, but I had to hold the head of the bull or cow or steer or whatever, while the rabbi would kill that animal in a kosher fashion. I'll just put it that way for you. Now that might even be too much information. I won't go into any more detail than that. But, people used to ask me, they said, does the rabbi say a prayer before each animal, before it, kills it or whatever? And I don't recall any praying. I just remember that if I didn't hold the animal still when he cut it, he would use God's name and a lot of other words that I can't repeat here. So that's what I remember about it. But, some people might find it offensive to eat, kosher meat because of the way that the animal is killed, or any kind of meat, really. More and more people are becoming vegetarian, not for health reasons, but because they don't like the way that the animals are treated. And if they find out that you eat meat, some of them have actually become offended. I'm sure I've dealt with this, and I'm sure many of you have as well. And in the Corinthian church, Paul said, look, you may think it's okay to eat meat that's been offered to idols, but since others don't, maybe it would be a good idea to just not eat that meat. You don't want to cause someone else to, lose their faith. So even though we shouldn't be easily offended, and others shouldn't be easily offended, we also shouldn't go around offending people just because we can. Okay? That's not love. That's not what love does. And so, even though I've gotten a little off track here, the bottom line is, some people are offended way too easily, and many people are just seems as though they're constantly looking for a reason to be offended. The fact is that anger is a human emotion. It's the way that God created us. We have emotions, and they're there for a reason, and we shouldn't try to suppress them, but that doesn't mean that we should allow our emotions to control us. And as it says in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for everything. There is a time, I believe, to be offended. I'm offended when people use my God's name in vain. It doesn't cause me to fly into a rage, but there is a time, I think, to be angry. And I think that's why our key verse today says that love isn't easily angered. Jesus became angry because the money changers had sort of taken over the temple, and he said, my house shall be called a house of prayer. It was his house. They came into his house and did things that he didn't agree with. So he became angry. He had what we call today righteous indignation. You won't find that term, righteous indignation, in the Bible anywhere. But there are times where God had indignation and he poured out his wrath and judgment upon nations and peoples. If our goal is to be like Jesus, then we may become angry at times, but we need to have discernment when it's okay and when it's not. Well, first, when is it not okay to be angry? Let me give you 4 situations when it's not okay to be angry. First is in retaliation. In retaliation. Romans 12:19 says, "Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." So often, we want our pound of flesh, don't we? If someone wrongs us, our first reaction is to make sure they pay for what they did. By not exacting revenge, we feel like we're saying what they did was okay. I think there are ways of getting that message across in a more constructive way. I think about Martin Luther King Jr. He was the champion of the civil rights movement. And he was often criticized for his nonviolent protests. He was criticized on one side because they felt that his protests went too far. They would just probably assume that they didn't protest at all. They just wanted to keep things the way they were. But on the other side, he was criticized because those people thought he didn't go far enough, that he needed to be more violent. And really, this was in a time when there were still lynchings. There was church burnings. There was crosses being burned on people's property. There was, in Birmingham, Alabama, there was a church blown up, or part of it, and 4 innocent young girls were killed. Terrible tragedy. And if any people had the right to be angry and to retaliate in kind, it was those black people of that racially divided South. But Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The means we use must be as pure as the ends we seek." I think that's good advice. The means we use must be as pure as the ends we seek. He was right. The real question is, what's your intent? Are you reacting to retaliate? Or are you reacting in order to remedy a situation? So that's retaliation. Then prolonged anger. The Bible is very clear that anger should be for a brief period of time. It says we shouldn't let the sun go down on our anger. If you're angry for more than a day, there's something else wrong. It's no longer just anger. Hebrews 12:15 says, "See to it that no one misses the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." If you allow anger to linger, you plant a seed of bitterness, and that root will begin to grow until it consumes you and everyone around you, really. Life is too short. It's too short to allow what others have done to you cause your life to be miserable. There was a man I knew who claimed to be a Christian, and who am I to say he was or wasn't? But he believed that I had wronged him. And the truth was, he had wronged me, but I had forgiven him, and I had also asked for his forgiveness. And many months later, I ran into this man, and as soon as he saw me, his whole disposition changed. And he said to me, the only words he said to me was, "Every time I think of you, I get so angry." And I didn't even know how to respond. All I could say was, "I'm sorry you feel that way." He had allowed a root of bitterness to pollute his whole being. Then there's suppressed anger. I told you I'm stoic by nature. Some people are stoic by choice. They become angry and they don't let it out. They're seething with rage, but they don't have an outlet for it. They never tell the person that offended them that they felt they had been wrong. The Bible tells us we should go to those who have anything against us and speak the truth in love and try to reconcile our relationship. Suppressing anger, it will give you ulcers, it will give you high blood pressure, and of course, that root of bitterness will spring up within you. Then there's uncontrollable anger. Anger is only one letter away from danger. Is that good? Yeah. I don't think that was from me. I think that was from someone else. That's way too clever for my mind. Anger is only one letter away from danger. Proverbs 29:22 says, "An angry man stirs up dissension, and a hot-tempered one commits many sins." When we fly into a rage, it causes us to be destructive or violent or verbally abusive. When that happens, there's something deeper wrong within us, I think. If that's happening, usually it's because we're using the present situation as an excuse to express feelings that have been residing under the surface for a while. And we need help. We need to talk it out with someone. We may even need professional counseling to determine the root of our anger. So that's uncontrollable anger. So if you're not sure if your anger is justified or not, I want to quickly just give you 7 questions from Hope for the Heart that might clarify it for us. First, do you use tactful, compassionate words, or do you use tactless, condemning words? Number 2, do you try to see the other person's point of view, or do you see only your point of view? 3, do you want to help the one who angers you, or do you want to punish the one who angers you? 4, do you focus on your own faults, or do you focus on the faults of others? 5, have you released all your expectations, or do you have unrealistic expectations? 6, are you flexible and cooperative, or are you inflexible and uncooperative? 7, do you quickly forgive injustices, or do you hold on to personal injustices? Now, I know you're going to forget all those in a minute, but just some food for thought. What is our motivation? What is causing the impulse to become angry? We need to think through these things. So that's, when is it not okay to be angry? When is it okay to be angry? And before we answer that, I think we need to answer the question, is it okay to be angry? Is it okay? There's a book out right now called Unoffendable. That's the title. And the premise of this book is that we never have the right to be offended. Never. And the author says that we can make the choice that we'll never allow ourselves to be offended. Psalm 119, 165 in the King James says, "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." Now, I haven't read the whole Unoffended book, and I'm not sure that I'm totally on board with all of what it says. But for some people, I think especially those that struggle with anger, making the choice to never be offended might be a good idea. Ephesians 4:26 says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry." This verse doesn't say that being angry is sinning. It just says that when we're angry, we should not sin. In fact, this verse gives us 3 things about anger. That there are times when anger is appropriate, that anger can lead to sin if we let it, and that anger should not be prolonged. And the next verse tells us even more, Ephesians 4:27, "And do not give the devil a foothold." In other words, anger is something that Satan leverages against us. It's something that Satan uses, especially, I think, if it is prolonged. That's why it's so important to not allow anger to control us. You don't think that Satan uses Christians against each other? I have news for you, my friends. You want to see a Christian that Satan is using? Look for an angry Christian. So when is it okay to be angry? Well, we talked about righteous indignation. There are times, I think, when we should be offended. When people are acting inappropriately, especially when it comes to the things of God. Jesus became angry when the money changers were using his house as a moneymaker. He also became angry when the Pharisees felt it was wrong for him to heal on the Sabbath day. I guess it's how Jesus reacted when he was angry. We're going to get angry sometimes, but what's the intent of our hearts? What do we do? What do we say? Do we hold a grudge? Is the means we use as pure as the ends we seek? So what's the cure for becoming easily angered? James 1:19 and 20 says, "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires." As with all of the topics in this series, love is the cure. The problem in this case is that we often become angry more quickly with the ones that we're closest to. I think it's because we spend more time with those people in all kinds of situations, so it's natural that they'll see us at our worst. I think it's also because we know that the ones who love us will probably forgive us more easily. So we let our guard down at times. This doesn't make it right. In fact, we've read this verse many times throughout this series, but Jesus said in John 13:34 and 35, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." This is our nursery. This is where we act out our behaviors with one another. This is our safe zone where we can practice loving each other so that when we get out there, and people are a lot more difficult to love, we've had some practice doing it right here. And the evidence to outsiders of our allegiance to Christ is supposed to be the love that we show to each other. Do you know that one of the greatest reasons that people avoid the church is because they believe that we're all a bunch of hypocrites? And in many ways, they're right. Maybe if we really practiced Jesus' words here, if we really, truly showed genuine love to one another, if we weren't so easily offended by one another, people would actually want to become followers of Christ as we are. Maybe we need to keep in mind when we have that urge to become angry or that urge to become offended, we need to keep in mind that there are souls at stake. When we sacrifice the soul of someone else just so that we can get our pound of flesh, our temper tantrum could cause someone to reject Christ. Perhaps if we remember that, we'll learn how to control our temper. Proverbs 14:17 says, "A quick-tempered man does foolish things." I don't think you can sum it up any better than that. Can anyone disagree with this? Some of us probably struggle with this more than others, but all of us, I think we need to all work on being more like Jesus every day. Let's remember that the way people will know we are Christians is by our love, not by our anger. So what's the solution to being easily angered? Love. Love is the answer. Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful that you love this world so much that you gave your one and only Son to die in our place, not to condemn the world, but to save this world. And Lord, I'm sure that with all that was going on in this world, you were easily in a position to become angry and violent against us. But you instead chose to take that step of love, of grace, of mercy, and reach out to us even while we were your enemies. Even when we were sinners, Christ died for us. We're so thankful. And Lord, as your word said, and Jesus said, no greater love has man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. Sometimes laying down our lives is to choose not to be offended, to choose not to become angry, to choose not to sin when we are angry. Help us, Lord, to do that. God, we just want to take a moment today. And I'm going to ask, is there anyone here you don't know Jesus? You haven't surrendered your life and your will and yourself to Him and then received His free gift of salvation, of forgiveness, of cleansing. If that's you, I'll just wait a moment. Just step out from where you are and come forward. I'd love to pray with you and for you. Have the courage to say, that's me. I want to be a follower of Christ. This is your opportunity right now. Lord, we thank you. Thank you for these wonderful people. God, I pray, Lord, for your blessings upon them. God, help us, Lord, to be more like Jesus every day. Help us, Lord, when we have that sudden urge and we feel that anger welling up within us, God, to choose not to suppress it, but to act it out in loving ways, in constructive ways, that the fruit of the Spirit would be evident in our lives and everything that we do and say. Bless your people. Keep them safe and healthy throughout this week. Go with them. And may the fragrance of your presence be upon them wherever they go. We praise you. We give you the glory and honor that is due you. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. You are dismissed.